Morse code is a form of communication invented in the 1830s by artist and inventor Samuel F.B. Morse. It was a breakthrough in human communication as it was one of the earliest forms of long-distance communication. It uses a series of long and short pulses to depict letters and form words and sentences.
Jeremiah Denton, a POW during the Vietnam War, used Morse code in a way never seen before. He blinked long and short pulses to form the word torture. He used this to alert the United States that the Vietnam government was lying about treating the POWs well, and were in fact torturing them. Jeremiah Denton was born on July 15, 1924, in Mobile, Alabama. He is the oldest of three brothers, and he attended McGill-Tulane Catholic High School. In the summer of 1943, he entered the U.S. Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland, and graduated 3 years later with a bachelor's degree in science. During his 34 years in the Navy, he was serviced on many ships and aircrafts, but his main field was naval operations. He was also the commanding officer of an attack squadron flying the A-6 Intruder. In 1957, he revolutionized naval strategies for nuclear war as an architect working on the haystack concept. The haystack concept concealed aircraft carriers from raiders by mixing them with commercial shipments and avoiding naval formations. This strategy showed effectiveness when it allowed two aircraft fleets to do 35 simulated atomic launches before aggressor aircraft and submarines could repel them. He then went to serve on the staff of the United States Sixth Fleet as the Fleet Air Defense Officer. Denton graduated from the Armed Forces Staff College and the Naval War College, where his thesis on international affairs received the President's Award. In 1964, he received the degree of Master Arts in International Affairs from George Washington University's School of Public and International Affairs in Washington, D.C. During the Vietnam War, Jeremiah Denton served as a United States naval aviator. He then became the prospective commanding officer of Attack Squadron 75, where he served aboard the aircraft carrier USS Independence in February 1965. Commander Denton was leading a 28 aircraft bombing mission over North Vietnam on July 18, 1965. He and his bomber or navigator Bill Schutte were forced to eject from their plane because of enemy anti-aircraft fire, and they went down over the village of Thanh Hoa near Hanoi in North Vietnam, and they were quickly captured and taken prisoner. Denton and Schutte were POWs for 8 years. Of the 8, 4 of them were spent in solitary confinement. While in the camp, Jeremiah was known as the leader and captain of the group of POWs captured, and later was officially the captain of the group at the camp. He was known as being the brave and most courageous of the POWs. In 1966, there was a scheduled press conference by the Vietnamese captors in which Jeremiah was supposed to be telling the press and media that he and the other POWs were being treated well in the camp. It was a propaganda to show that the Vietnamese were treating the US POWs well. Jeremiah used this opportunity as a distress signal. While being questioned, he answered all the inquiries, all while blinking the long and short pulses of Morse code, spelling out torture. When received by the US government, this confirmed that the POWs were not being treated appropriately, and they were in fact being tortured.
When he stepped off the jet on the way back, Denton said, "We are honored to have had the opportunity to serve our country under difficult circumstances. We are profoundly grateful to our Commander-in-Chief and to our nation for this day. God bless America." Afterwards, he was briefly hospitalized at the Naval Hospital in Portsmouth, Virginia from February to December in 1973. Jeremiah was assigned to the Commander Naval Air Force's U.S. Atlantic Fleet. He then became the commandant of the Armed Forces Staff College in Norfolk from January 1974 to June 1977. He wrote a book in 1976 about his experiences as an American POW in North Vietnam titled When Hell Was in Session. Being a special assistant to the Chief of Naval Education and Training at the Naval Air Station in Pensacola, Florida, was his final assignment from June 1977 till his retirement on November 1st, 1977. After his retirement, he started his political career by running as a Republican for a U.S. Senate seat from his home state of Alabama in 1980. He then won against Democratic candidate Jim Folsom Jr. with 50.2% of the votes. Doing this, Denton made himself the first retired Navy admiral that was ever elected to the United States Senate. This was because the only other retired Navy admiral was appointed to fill a vacancy and not officially elected. Denton was also very interested in national security issues, especially with regards to the Soviet Union. He set up the Senate Judiciary Subcommittee on Security and Terrorism, which focused on supposed communist and Soviet threats, with Republican Senators Orrin Hatch and John East. In 1986, when Denton was running for re-election to the Senate, he just barely lost with 49% of the votes against U.S. Congressman Richard Shelby. His first wife, Catherine Jane Maury, died 61 years after their marriage. One of his sons, James S. Denton, was the publisher and editor of the book World Affairs and was also the director of the World Affairs Institute. In 2010, he was remarried to Mary Bell Bourdon. At the age of 89, Jeremiah passed away because of complications from a heart ailment at a hospice in Virginia Beach on March 28, 2014. He's buried at Arlington National Cemetery with his wife Jane. Jeremiah was a courageous and brave POW. His legacy will live on, and he will be remembered for his quick thinking as an American general and senator.
When given the opportunity to go before the cameras and during your interrogation as a POW, you did something extraordinary, and I have tape of that. I want you to look at this and tell me what you're doing here. This is during an interrogation, a television interview.
Well, 3 days ago, they hit me for confession. I'd been tortured unconscious a number of times. I gave them what I hope was a not credible confession. Then they told me, set me up on the top of two stools placed on top of each other and told me they were going to do this to me, have me interviewed, and I was to condemn my government.
Right.
But
the blinking.
Reisner and I prayed about what I should do. Should I just refuse to go to the interview or go and try to blow it up? And the chances of that working were 1,000,000 to 1, because I go there and I defy them, and then they burn the tape and torture me some more. But I decided to try that, okay? And I got there, and they entered the room, and as they came in, there were these lights like that, and I said, in case they change the words that I intend to say, I'm going to bleep the word torture to prove that they at least had to torture me to get me here. And then when he asked me the questions, they asked me twice, the key sentence being, what do you think of the policy of your government in Vietnam? The first time I said, I don't know what the policy of my government is, because the only sources of news I have are North Vietnamese. But whatever the policy of my government is, I support it, and I will support it as long as I live. They asked me another time, and I said, the same thing about, I don't know what the policy is now, but whatever, but I am a member of that government, and it is my job to support it, and I will support it as long as I live. Well, I thought when they dragged me out of there that nobody was ever going to see that, and I was going to get hurt pretty bad. I was hurt pretty bad, the worst torture I ever got after that. But by the grace of God, that Japanese photographer who had been having such interviews and taping tortured confessions knew he had a big scoop. He sneaked out of Hanoi that night, went back to Tokyo and auctioned it off. The first bidder was ABC for 50 grand. And I didn't learn until 3 days before I was released that when Red McDaniel, who was in that movie you just showed, he was one of the two shown, told me that he had seen it. I didn't.